Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here, because today we're going to unlock the secrets of exactly how we derive meaning from art and the humanities. Have you ever read a poem or listened to a song and just wondered, what is the true meaning hiding in here? Well, we're going to explore that using two incredibly powerful, yet completely opposing analytical lenses. By the end of this, the way you look at literature, languages, linguistics, philosophy, theater arts, fine arts, and even music is going to be completely transformed.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structured path for today. We'll start with the search for meaning, explore new criticism, and apply it to literature. Then, we'll pivot to new historicism, apply that to history, and finally, we'll put both theories head-to-head. Section 1. The search for meaning. Where does meaning actually live in a piece of art? It's the foundational question we have to start with.
To really grasp this debate, it helps to trace how our approach to analyzing texts has evolved over time. From the 1940s through the 1960s, a movement called New Criticism absolutely dominated the academic world. It was a major reaction against older styles of criticism that, frankly, focused way too much on an author's biography. But then, by the 1980s, the pendulum swung back with the emergence of New Historicism, which basically brought the outside world rushing right back into the text. And today, we actively apply both of these lenses across all the humanities to get a complete, well-rounded picture of the media we consume.
And this brilliantly illustrates the heavy hitters, the key pioneers of these movements. You've got Cleanth Brooks and I.A. Richards. They really championed the idea of practical criticism, basically reading closely without needing to know a single thing about the author's background. T.S. Eliot pushed for poetry to be seen as this impersonal, autonomous object. Contrast that with Stephen Greenblatt down at the bottom, the true pioneer of New Historicism. He argued for self-fashioning, this fascinating idea that a text and its cultural context are actually mutually constitutive. Basically, they create each other.
Moving on to Section 2, New Criticism, where the text is absolutely king. Here we're isolating the art from the artist.
To defend this approach, critics W.K. Wimsatt and M.C. Beardsley identified two huge traps that readers constantly fall into. The first is called the intentional fallacy. This is the totally misguided idea that what the author intended to say is the true meaning of the work. New critics argue forcefully that the author's intent simply does not matter. Zero. Once the work is published, it belongs entirely to the words on the page. If an author meant to write a tragedy but the words form a comedy, well, guess what? It's a comedy. The text speaks for itself.
The second trap is the affective fallacy. This happens when we evaluate a work based purely on how it makes us feel. Think about it. If a poem makes you cry, you might instantly say, wow, that's brilliant. But new critics warn us that our transient, fleeting emotions are highly subjective, making them a pretty terrible metric for judging art. Literary judgment shouldn't be about your feelings, right? It should be rooted in a rigorous, objective analysis of the text's internal mechanics.
Section 3, Applying New Criticism specifically to literature. Let's see how this works using Wol Soyinka's famous poem, Telephone Conversation.
To do this right, we have to rely on the core new critical belief that form and content are intrinsic and completely inseparable. The architecture of a piece, its punctuation, its rhyme, its meter, it doesn't just hold the meaning, it literally generates the meaning and the emotional depth. The structure itself is the message.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we can systematically break down Soyinka's poem using only its internal mechanics. Just look at the dashes. They aren't just thrown in as punctuation, they actively mimic a fractured conversation and serious emotional volatility. Then we hit the words, how dark, completely in italics. Visually, this immediately amplifies the prejudice and the sheer surprise in the speaker's voice. Notice the deliberate pause right before the phrase red booth. It introduces hesitation, a real heavy weight. The entire disjointed dialogue structure practically builds racial bias right into the rhythm of the reading. And the crazy part? We derived all of that profound societal commentary without ever leaving the borders of the page. It's a highly effective way to read, for sure. But it forces us to ask a pretty critical question. Can a text truly exist in a vacuum? Is it genuinely possible, or maybe even a little naive, to completely ignore the outside world, the historical moment, and the very power dynamics that birthed the text in the first place? Which brings us to Section 4, New Historicism. Here, context is everything. History acts as an active co-author.
This quote really hits the nail on the head for this movement. Texts are influenced by the socio-political climates. Conversely, texts also have the power to shape and alter perceptions of history. It's a two-way street.
Society fashions the text, and then the text goes right back out into the world and fashions the society. They're mutually constitutive. You literally cannot understand one without the other.
Let's look at how these two lenses treat the concept of context side by side. For new criticism, context is a distraction. They believe overemphasizing history actively detracts from the immediate aesthetic experience of the art. But for new historicism, context is the engine. It's the vital framework of cultural and social conditions that you absolutely require to truly comprehend what the text is doing.
Section 5. Applying New Historicism to History. Let's see this wide-angle lens in action using Chinua Achebe's masterpiece, Things Fall Apart.
To truly understand this book, a new historicist says we must examine the specific historical inputs. We're talking the 1950s colonial and nationalist discourses happening in Nigeria, right when it was written. Within the text itself, the traditional Umuofia justice system is actively colliding with British colonial power. Think about the district commissioner writing his flawed, biased book at the end of the novel. That is a direct, sharp commentary on who actually gets to write history. Furthermore, new historicists always ask, who is missing? They look at omitted voices, like the marginalized perspectives of women in the community, or how British administrative records of the era completely silenced indigenous voices. Suddenly, the text is a complex historical document, not just a neat little story.
Section 6. The theories head-to-head. Let's see how they directly apply across the humanities.
So, the crucial point is, where is meaning actually found? It's the ultimate debate. New criticism confidently answers that meaning resides solely within the formal structure of the text itself, the language, the imagery, the rhythm. But new historicism completely disagrees. They assert that meaning emerges strictly from the dynamic interplay between the text and the massive socio-political forces of its historical context. And when we ask, can a text be understood without context, the split is incredibly stark. New criticism says, yes, absolutely. The intrinsic qualities of a well-crafted text provide all the depth you need, totally independent of the background. New historicism says, no way. To read without historical influence is not just impractical, it's intellectually naive, because you're willfully ignoring the very forces that built the text in the first place.
Now, this isn't just theory. For those of you taking courses like FOA 311, or really anyone studying literature, languages, applied arts, or philosophy, applying these theories is incredibly practical. Engaging deeply with new historicism, for instance, trains you to spot built-in biases. It forces you to recognize the colonial gaze, the author's specific worldview, and the power dynamics constantly at play. It profoundly enhances your ability to critically evaluate how history is actually represented within the arts. Let's move to a totally different medium and see how this builds our understanding. Let's look at music, specifically Fela Kuti's iconic song, Zombie. Applying these two distinct lenses to the exact same piece of music yields completely different interpretations. A new criticism lens focuses purely on the formal musical elements, the incredible technical artistry, the repetitive call and response structures, the brilliant marching rhythms. It's a masterclass study in composition. But flip that lens to new historicism, and suddenly the song is a living document of 1970s Nigeria. The focus entirely shifts to military oppression, Fela Kuti's own political detention, and the entire Afrobeat genre acting as this powerful, undeniable form of social resistance and counterculture.
Two lenses, two vastly different ways of uncovering meaning, and both are absolutely incredible tools in their own right. One teaches us the rigorous discipline of looking closely at the art itself. The other teaches us to look widely at the world that made it. So the next time you read a book, watch a play, or listen to a song, I really want you to ask yourself, which lens are you going to use to uncover the next hidden truth in the art you consume? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning everything you read.